Hey y'all. Welcome back, Purposeful Family. Welcome to another purposefully packed episode, a live episode of the Pretty Purposeful Podcast. I am your host, Miss Angie Melange.
And I'm Candace.
Hey girlie, how you doing? You
Fan-
look beautiful.
Thank you. So do you, girl. My lashes just fell off. I guess they don't want to be on the episode. So I'm like,
Well,
fine.
you look great, sis. I love the
So thank
earrings.
you.
Thank you. We are like a little bit twinning here. Got the stripes going on. You know, Memorial Day weekend is coming up. This was not even, you know what? This was not planned.
It wasn't. It really wasn't. I was like, let's do the striped dress. And then Andrew's like, bet. And then bow.
And I just thought about it like, okay, stars and stripes. Okay. Anywho, we are so excited to get into this episode today. Again, this is a live episode, y'all. We are midway through season 4. Woo! Where's my bell? Woo! So excited for this episode today. We do have a guest joining us. We're going to have a panel discussion about mental health in the Black community. So this episode is actually titled, I need to update this. Give me 1 second because I think I changed the name of it a couple times, but The Weight We Carry.
That's right.
Black mental health. Let's go ahead and put that up here. There we go. Sis, where'd you go?
I'm here.
Yes. So today's topic is the weight we carry, Black mental health. So as you guys know, we've been dealing with a lot this year. And so more and more focus is on mental health now more than ever. It's no secret that, you know, our community has been plagued with trauma after trauma after trauma. And, you know, Candace and I are advocates of mental health. And so we want to take this time to, one, recognize Mental Health Awareness Month, and also just create this space that we can have an open discussion about how mental health is impacting our community and what are some ways that we can break the stigma and encourage people to get the help that they need. So sis, how you feeling about today's episode?
Much needed. I am super duper excited. I am very excited about our special guest.
Me too.
Oh, she about to bring it. When I say she about to bring it.
Yes. As a matter of fact, let me go ahead and take this moment to go ahead and introduce our panelists for today. Joining us, she's actually one of our season 3 guests. She is a healthcare leader, and she is bringing so much wisdom and expertise to the table. We are so happy to have her, welcome her back to the Pretty Purposeful Podcast. Everybody, help us welcome Miss Tiara Owens.
I'm so glad to be back. Hi, y'all are so beautiful. I'm just so happy. Season 3 felt like just yesterday.
Oh, I know. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for just your making yourself available for this discussion.
Always.
And it was pretty last minute. So you guys, you know, Tara is very flexible. We appreciate you being here. And we look forward to getting into this discussion. Now, really quickly, I don't see that we have any live guests joining yet, but I'm going to click over to comments. And I think, sis, if I'm not mistaken, let me hit show comments on stage. Okay, so if anybody does join the live and you want to leave a comment, definitely leave a comment in the chat and we'll show your comment on the screen. Also, I want to try to change this view. There we go. Let's put Miss Tiara in the center. There we go, because she is Spotlight. She's our special guest. Oh, we are so excited. So again, this topic of mental health, Tiara, let us know, let our audience know why this topic was something that you wanted to be a part of, or this discussion, I should say.
Yeah, I think for a plethora of reasons, most obviously one, we're Black women. Yeah, and I think that to your point, we are in the space of dealing and holding trauma, whether that's generational, forging first generational steps into places that we haven't been in before. So I think it's important for us to just know how to navigate that and lean on each other. I think just rebuilding and anchoring community. Specifically in my career, though, I'm in pediatrics. And so I work in behavioral mental health. So I think it's important to also shape our generation, right? And like teaching them early on about ways to recognize their emotions and how to regulate. And I think it's important just to pass that on. So mental health is always going to have a safe space in my heart. So I'm excited for us to talk today.
Absolutely. Yes. And that is right. You are in pediatrics, and that's important too. I think during this discussion, I would love to hear, your perspective as far as how mental health in our community, how it does impact the next generation and how it has impacted our generation. Because I don't know about you all, but I know from my experience, my elders, they're not really open to talking about mental health. It's just like, historically been shunned, and the stigma just keeps people from getting the help that they need. So let's go ahead and kick off this conversation. Segment 1, we're going to talk about where does it hurt. So I guess in this segment, I don't know, Tiara, do you want to share first? We're just going to kind of share our personal experiences, just like your background, like what you know about mental health when it, like, I guess was first introduced to you, and just how you've navigated maintaining your own mental health.
So much to like pick apart. I think really just where it hurts, I think is, I think in career-wise standpoint, it's okay. Can you all hear me okay?
I'm trying to get you back on stage.
It's okay.
I'm trying to get her in the spotlight. I'm sorry.
It's all good. No, it's okay. So what I'll say is just how it's navigated for me has been mainly just understanding my place in the world. I think I've just navigated that at a fairly young age. So I am a first generation college student, first in my family on one side to even go to college, and then the first ever in my family on both sides generation to go to get my master's degree and get an advanced degree outside of that. So I feel like I've just navigated understanding my place in corporate America or just in society. And really that has almost fueled me to just want to learn more, to educate myself, to really just get ingrained in understanding what that looks like and how I've dealt with it. So just kind of seeing one from a personal perspective, as the oldest of my family, the eldest daughter, how can I give back to my sister? How can I give back to my family, and just really sharing information. And then in career, I was very intentional on making sure that I got into behavioral mental health spaces so that I can be able to learn from psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors, and how we know the science behind our brain, so then we can apply the actuality of it, in our real day to day. So where it hurts is just really navigating and blending kind of both of those things and finding resources and then just sharing them with our future. I think that's really kind of where I've been navigating my space.
Okay, we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna get it right.
We
heard you. You must not. You probably couldn't have heard. You couldn't hear us while we were backstage. So, you guys, I just want to apologize. This is only our second time that we've gone live, so we may have a couple little blips here and there, but just bear with us. But thank you so much for sharing, Tiara. No, your story definitely resonates, and I can relate to that as well. I think that. As you mentioned, like first generation, college grad, that's a lot. It is a lot of weight that we carry, right? And especially with us both being in the healthcare spaces, I can also, relate to wanting to get into that space just because of how mental health has impacted my own family. And with that being said, I'll go ahead and share a little bit about how mental health has showed up in my life. And I guess when I was first introduced to mental health. So I don't want to put anybody's, personal health information out there, but I'm just going to say that several members in my family had struggled with mental health, and also drug and alcohol, to cope with the mental health. And it was always, back in the day, if a person was struggling with mental health, it was deemed, you were crazy, it was frowned upon. If you talked about going to a therapist, it's like, oh, they got to shrink, something's wrong with them. But really, that was a way of actively getting your mental health in a better state. And we just really weren't aware of just how much mental health care was a luxury. And of course, as we know, those who were brought up in like middle class, or heck, let's just be clear, if you were outside of the Black and brown community, you probably had access to a therapist, and that was just like the norm. But for our community, if there was ever a mention of therapy or medicine, it was frowned upon. So it keeps a lot of people silenced and afraid to actually let someone know that they need help. I think my very first encounter with my own mental health struggles was around middle school. I dealt with some bullying, just trying to fit in, just to find, my identity. I had lived with my grandmother. So going from one neighborhood to a new neighborhood, didn't know anyone, new school, and just trying to adjust. That was the first time that I felt depressed, and I didn't know how to name it. I didn't know what it was called. I just knew I wanted to be in my bedroom, listening to my music and closed off from everybody. So a lot of isolation in my preteen and adolescent years. So that's kind of my background. And of course, like I said, with the number of family members that I've witnessed struggle with mental health, I absolutely am driven by that experience and just wanting to be a voice, and also, of course, helping others in our community to get the help that they need. What about you, sis?
Yes. Oh, where do I start? As the both of you all were speaking, I'm just reminded of how grateful I am to have relationships with some of my family members where they were open and vulnerable with me about their mental health struggles. And that just made it more relatable, right? Because ever since I was in high school, I definitely, it started with the thought, Angie, you know the background story behind this. I ain't going to go into the details, but it was a traumatizing thought that I had that turned into some severe OCD, and then it turned into like hit and run OCD. And that, so I can understand mental health issues and struggles. And I'm just so grateful that we live in a day and age where it's not becoming that shrink culture, or you're going to a shrink. It is now becoming more and more acceptable. Yes, I run into people that are like, you're wasting your money going to a therapist, because I go to a therapist to this day. Yes. And I'm just, look, it has helped me. I don't care if y'all call me crazy or not. It is helping me remain sane.
Yes.
So yes, that's all I got to share.
It's that destigmatization, like literally that word shrink makes you feel smaller. So even taking away the power of that word, I think makes the most difference. So the more that you own it, say it without the detraction. I don't care if you think I'm crazy. I do go to therapy and I am getting better, and period. That's the end.
Period.
Yeah. Period. I agree. I was going to say, we were just talking about just how do you find a therapist? That's something that I think in our community, I know when I first was introduced to therapy, there was no encouragement to be intentional about it. It was just like, this provider's in your network, this is their availability. You book an appointment, you go, you see if it's a good fit. And if it's not, you find someone else. Well, I don't know. Me personally, throughout the years, I have learned that you really do have to be very intentional, not just for your mental health, provider, but just your healthcare providers in general. That is something that I think our community really hasn't been empowered to do until recently. Like I said, and just in the past, I think we were just, grateful to be able to have access to care, right? It wasn't even a thing of, oh, you get to be picky. You just are happy that you actually have a facility that's within, reasonable proximity to where you live. I know my mom, when my mom used to travel back and forth to her therapist, she would take me and my sister with her. And I mean, one thing I will say is back in the day, for her to be going and going consistently, I have to give much kudos to her because, again, it was something that was frowned upon. But meanwhile, while people are having opinions about it, she's steadily working on her issues. So that for me, having that exposure early on, it's, I just reflect back on it and I'm like, wow, I didn't even realize how much of a luxury that was. So excuse me, ladies.
So Candace, how did you find your therapist, if you don't mind me asking? I can share my story about just my therapy journey.
Yeah, so it started off in college because I noticed that, I won't even, okay, to answer your question, I found my therapist through a friend. I called her up. I was like, yo, I need help. She was like, I know a therapist, and her therapist was awesome. So I continued to see her.
Mm.
So that's how I found my therapist. What about
Gotcha.
you?
So it's kind of like, so it sounds like you got yours through like word of mouth.
Word
I
of
feel
mouth.
like for me, I didn't have anybody to look around. I think that's kind of something to your point of like how I learned mental health and how it matters. I didn't even recognize my brain needing help, until I got into a work environment that was extremely toxic and I just felt myself not being the same. And this is maybe 3 years ago or so. And I think that there was a stigma that was attached to me that you can just power through. Black women just, we have to continuously beat it, bite the bullet. We'll just deal with it. We'll just deal with it. But it compounded on my life so much that it was just a perfect storm. And I said, okay, I can't move and function like this for the rest of my life. And so ironically, through the same organization that was causing toxicity, I had access to free teledoc services. And so I just kind of started to peruse that option and then found a LPC and then kind of started to have sessions through that. But I feel like now that I'm getting older and better, I want to be more proactive in how I utilize therapy. I don't ever want to use it as a point to get help when I need it. I want to have it as a resource always consistently so that I can be able to just use that when times are getting tough and then I can be able to leverage that. So I feel like just navigating through that has been something that I've learned. But now that I work in healthcare, in behavior mental health, I have access to different psychology friends or different psychiatrist friends who have just kind of helped through word of mouth, similar to you, Candace, to help me find my therapist. And so that's how I found mine.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean that definitely helps. I think word of mouth is really great because, especially from another black woman. Yeah, yeah. I think for my experience was actually just recently. Would say within the last year, I found mine, and I was very intentional. So let me just say, for those of you who are watching this who don't know, I am, if you haven't figured out, I'm mixed. So I dealt with this whole thing where I didn't want to have a therapist that I had to like spend so many sessions trying to get them to see me and understand my experience. So I intentionally said, you know what? I want to find a therapist who is Afro Latina like me and who also doesn't speak Spanish and who was also raised by a Black woman. So she totally will understand my lived experience. So I could just get right to the work and don't have to spend multiple sessions just trying to get a baseline for us to build from. So I found that it's been effective. And she's been my therapist going on a year now. I can't even believe that. Wow. But when I tell you effective, when it's effective when each time you show up, you're ready, you're eager, you're excited to do the work. And there's just not that barrier or that disconnect or that mistrust. Speaking of mistrust, That is something that we struggle with in general when it comes to healthcare. So Tara, what has been your experience as far as either yourself dealing with mistrust when it comes to mental health care providers, or if if you know of anybody that has, not sought out medical or not have not set out for mental health care because of the mistrust?
I think that's such a loaded conversation because I think that that speaks for a lot of just the Black community. We're nervous of who and where to go. I mean, I even had a conversation. I had a patient with one of my therapists, and that therapist is no longer working at an organization. And so we were creating kind of a transition plan for them. And we had a white therapist who backfilled the role. And mind you, our population is predominantly young Black families, young Black kiddos, school age kids, some, 0 to 5, etc. And mom and the daughter were just very adamant. No, I do not want this white therapist. I would like to have a Black therapist. So I think just there is a level of mistrust, I think, as it comes to just like our racial experience and seeking help from those who we have been conditioned to be fearful of, or, not being able to like share fully who our authentic selves are. And just navigating that space. So I think because predominantly, right, the therapy space is filled with maybe, please don't quote me on the numbers, but predominantly a white area, that is dominated by like white therapists, it is hard to kind of seek and find that information. So for me, I have been very intentional on only seeking that. I want someone who understands my experience. I seek Black women, but even then, like there's so many diversities of Black women. So just finding and fine tuning what works for me. It's almost like dating, right? Like you got to have a little session, see how you feel with them. Does the vibe match? Does it not? And then continue your journey, moving forward and leveraging resources. But I think mistrust is simply just not being educated enough on what I need to know to find the right therapist, or just not having access to be able to find the ones that you need that's going to help you move to that next level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. And how about you, sis? How about you? Did you do you know of anybody that had any issues around finding their therapist? Mistrust, or did you yourself?
I just had this conversation with Angie an hour ago of how someone that I am particularly close with right now, a friend of mine, and he literally just said he is not going to no therapist. I think part of the reason is because he doesn't trust none of them, and he feels like he would just be giving his money away. Oh, we have a question from Ryan Templeton. He asked, can you be too picky on finding a therapist?
That's a great question, Ryan. I would say no. You can't be too picky. In fact, you should be more picky. So yeah, that's just my thoughts. What about you, ladies?
I don't know. I hear you. And I think I have also been in a lens of like Black woman, got to have this certain age bracket. So I want to say, no, you can't be too picky. But I do think that sometimes there has to be some kind of levels of parameter to allow for different mindsets and different thought processes to help you reframe your perspective a little bit. So even though I have like my hardcore, I can still be flexible in certain areas. So I think just balancing the two. If my list is 10 deep of what I want in a therapist, and then it's 20 of what I don't want, I might try to, balance that out a little bit better.
I agree. I agree 10,000%, because I remember there was a moment in time where I was being very picky on finding a therapist. I was like, okay, maybe if I get a Black gentleman's perspective on what I'm dealing with, he will help me out. And it turned out like this was not the right therapist for me, because he was telling me to go back to the toxic situation I was in. And he later sent me a message and was saying, I don't think that was a good idea. I'm like, no, I don't. I don't think that was a good idea.
Yeah. And I think it's important too to know that your therapists are giving you suggestions too.
Right.
And sometimes it's hard to discern advice, from someone who is clinical
Yeah.
versus kind of like what you are, intuitionally like needing to do and move for yourself. So I think that's a very unique situation and just relationship to navigate. It
Yeah,
is.
so if you knew anybody that was out there currently that might be watching this later or now, who feels that they don't have, I guess, the right criteria for finding a therapist, what would be something that you would suggest just to get them started? What are some basic, I guess, parameters that they would have?
Yeah, I think community-based resources, I think, are always a place to go. Because I mean, even for me, not everyone has an organization that provides insurance to go find a therapist, right? So I think, really taking the time to acknowledge one that, hey, I need answers and I need help. And most people have access to phones or libraries or computers to be able to go to, therapy for Black girls or therapy for Black men, and searching on websites and directories or finding local, Atlanta, community groups that can just help you talk through that and can provide more succinct and directed resources. So I think that the access and the help is everywhere. And I think this the first step is just to acknowledge, hey, I need to make this time to go and get it. And then, working to connect to get there. I think that's one of the things that I'm always advocating for.
Yeah. Yep. Did you want to add to that, sis? Did you have any, like, if you were referring somebody, if they came and said, Candace, I don't know where to start looking for a therapist?
I think Tiara hit it spot on.
Yeah.
I have nothing else to add.
I agree.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, speaking of community resources, you guys know with this new administration, right? We are definitely facing some cuts in funding, right? So, speaking of community resources, with, I guess, the impacts of all of these different executive orders and changes happening, what can we as a community do as an alternative, let's say, for an established community resource? What are some ways that we can kind of fill the gap until we know what the future holds, or until we create the future?
Right. I don't even know if there's a dedicated answer to that, because I think that it's so tough, because I think just the societal kind of structure of things seem to be impacting our people, Black and brown people, more proportionately or disproportionately, because they receive Medicaid and Medicare services. They're receiving access to be able to get the care to the mental health. I'm feeling that directly working at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. We have a very huge Medicaid population, and carving out behavioral mental health will cut that from them. And we serve as kind of like this liaison, space between getting the family to primary care services, to specialized services, to BMH services, and then also connecting them to the community. So I think, this whole conversation of cutting Medicaid and losing a lot of access to this will cause great turmoil. But I think the focus needs to be, in my opinion, just shifting our Black dollars, our Black funds into funneling and protecting our people. So these smaller 501c3 nonprofits who are giving resources, how can we band together to create some type of coalition or program to really just build a stronger force so that everybody can have community networks, and it's not just siloed that they exist here and there. It's a matter of kind of building together. Woo! Yes, it's needed.
I said
I knew she was gonna bring it.
she was gonna be on fire.
I'm trying, because it's critical. It affects us so deeply, and half of us don't even know that we need the help until we go out and we find it, or it's hit the fan ultimately.
Yep.
So I just want to just throw the idea out there, because I know you mentioned, like, it's kind of like a living, breathing, effort right now. So that's why this conversation is definitely more important. than ever before. Where I'm trying to think, we talked about potential alternatives. You talked about coalition building. How can we like better organize either locally or nationally as it relates to coalition building? Any ideas, any thoughts?
Mm. Honestly, I feel like there just needs to be a shift perspective, and myself included, right? I feel like we are all, on the grind, working for a lot of these organizations. Angie, you're in healthcare as well, and we kind of funnel and rely on these organizations to kind of provide answers for us, and then we get so frustrated of how slow health systems move, and the answers and the help is there, but you got to kind of have to pay for it, right? So there's a lot of just barriers to entry for the people who really need the help the most. I think just my entrepreneurial mind and kind of that mindset is how I've started to think about just shifting things. But I think that the key really is just like having some centralized building, not something just for me or just for my direct, folks that I know. I think it's about finding groups of people who have done it and building on top of each other, or maybe not even creating my own lane, but putting all my exhaustion, my resources, my availability into something that's already established. No, because I don't need my name to be able to leave a legacy, and it's a matter of just kind of pushing the needle into saving us, saving our generation, saving our kids. And so I think just shifting perspective of let's not create 1,000 different, 501c3s or 1,000 LLCs. Let's go ahead and help and move what exists and build upon that for a skyscraper of support, So I think that's the focus that I think I'm looking towards now, and I'm shifting my mind to understand that, because it's not about me anymore. As we get older, the people who is going to impact the most are the people who are behind us. So how can we prepare them for the storm that we see coming?
And also our most vulnerable population, our elders. I mean, our moms, our aunties, our grandmoms, those of us who are still blessed to have grandparents, right? They are also at risk of losing their funding, Medicaid and Medicare, especially. So, wow, when you just think about just the elder population and the different mental health issues that they deal with, from memory loss to dementia to, it's just, just even the traumas that they have not really dealt with, right? That they're just living through. So, I agree. This is definitely going to be a collective effort. And I totally agree with you as well, where you said that we don't need more, organizations. We don't need more nonprofits. And I feel that's kind of like Candace and I, like we partnered with Teens on Point. This is an established organization, right? I'm very passionate about the youth. We're very passionate about giving back to the community. And it was just a great opportunity for us to come together, bringing our resources and really, like I said, this is an established organization with a clear program, right? It's very programmatic. And here we are, we're a podcast, but at the same time, we're also community advocates. So I love how we're able to leverage our platform and our passion really to help the community, to kind of step in and fill those gaps where they may not even know exist, right? I don't know. We recently just did an initiative to candy condoms and combos. Another effort that,
Yes.
raising awareness and trying to be the voice and keep the conversation going around our health. Because let's be real, sexual health impacts mental health,
100%.
and vice versa.
100%.
You're not mentally well here, you may not be making the right decisions, right? So
100%. And I think that's important for the Black community as well. A lot of psychosocial patterns that I see in the office are women who have been, coming. The NIA project specifically at Grady is for women who have been in domestic partnership abuse situations or come from childhood trauma situations, and they offer free resources and support for them. And so folks who have gone through that type of trauma-based physical experiences, it hits almost 10 times harder just mentally after the fact. So
what's
being
the
able
name
to
of the
support
program?
So it's called the NIA Project. So that is at Grady Health.
How do you spell that?
And like NIA, like the Swahili word for purpose. So NIA, like
Just
Nia
NIA.
Long.
Okay.
The NIA
NIA
Project.
Project. And that's at Grady.
It is at Grady, yes. And it's a free program, just resources for women who need support in those areas. And I think they've done some incredible work. Even though my focus is pediatrics, you know, there are babies who are born out of sexual assaults and go to Grady to deliver and, you know, need care. And so moms have struggles with bonding with these children. And so we offer support to kind of do parent training and child observation to figure out how we can kind of blend that early behavioral relational relationship. So things of that nature we don't really think about, and it starts so early, you know. And so that child could grow up without the proper resources and, you know, not have the support that they need because their mom didn't have the support, and then that turns into kind of that whole generational curse that we see in our community. So things and services like that, like ours, BMH, behavior mental health, like all those things are just so interconnected, and people don't really take the time to look at it because you can't see it. You can't see that somebody is struggling. And so people deem it to not be a big deal because we don't speak it. So it's just kind of a double-edged sword, it feels like sometimes. So that's why you have to just be present and just know resources so you can share them as you can.
Right.
Okay. Did you have anything to add on that, Candace?
Whew, so many thoughts just came in my mind. I'm just so grateful that we did do that community event, the Candy Condoms and Conversations, because
that sounds so fun.
It was fun. It was inspiring. Tiara, when I say we met gentlemen that were like, you know what, because we had questions where they could pick questions out of the bowl. And one of the gentlemen, I think the questions were like, you know, what did you learn, or what is something that is very impactful from sex? Like, what makes it more than just the physical act? And he was like, my daughter.
Yeah.
And that was just so powerful because he's absolutely right. And with you just saying, you know, there are kids being traumatized just by parents that were irresponsible. That in itself is like a mental strain on children. That's just the itty bitty part of some of the mental issues that we see in our young adults and our children. And that's something that can, I mean,
it lives with you.
It lives with you. Yes. And if you can help it, I mean, I'm not talking about any rape victims or anything like that, but oh my gosh, it just is really deep. There's so many nuances.
Yeah. And it starts with education before you even get to that point, right? So I love that y'all are doing that, especially targeting it towards both races. I think it's important to not put, you know, imbalanced, responsibility on one particular person. Yes, women bear the children, but men also need to be educated on safe sex practices just as much as women should. So I think having those conversations and keeping that flow open is so critical. I love that. Do more and give out free condoms to anybody who needs them.
Because I say, ooh, girl, I'm sorry, Angie. Something else that I was also thinking about is it just feels like you've heard of us being in a spiritual war. It feels like we are in a war spiritually, and especially when it comes to the media that's being put out there. A lot of the songs talking about, you know, sex and this, that, and the third. And oh my gosh, y'all, I was listening to Apple Music and that song that used to be on Hustle and Flow with Terrence Howard, Whoop That. I was like, God,
that's recirculating. That's recirculating.
It came up on like 90s hip, and I was just like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, but I'm like, this is so not okay for you, Candace, to be jamming to this because
right, like that's a pimp theme song.
And in my head, I'm over here like saying, well, let's make it positive. Let's whoop that negative version of you, Candace. Whoop that negative version. Whoop that negative version.
That's how you know that therapy is working. That's how you know that therapy is working. You're removing that negative self-talk.
Yeah.
Yes. We ain't whooping no tricks or females or anybody. We whooping the negative versions of myself because I'm
Our
over
old
here.
versions, yeah.
Yes,
That is
yeah.
so real. That's so funny. But music really does like play a huge role, I think, in like how you think. And I don't think we think about that. Now there's a psychology behind the music that we ingest. So that is so
Speaking of,
interesting to hear.
Oh, I got
speaking
another.
of, mhm.
I'm so sorry. Look, y'all got me hyped now. So I was at this vegan restaurant and Tony Braxton was playing in the background. I think it was the song "Long as I Live, I'll Never Get Over."
Mhm.
And there was somebody in the line. She was like, "Dang, this is a good song, but I ain't trying to resonate with what she's saying." In the
Right.
song, she was saying, like, "I'm never gonna get over this person. I'm never gonna move on. It's killing me." And it's like, oh, that could take a mental strain.
Yep.
It can. It
But that
really
song is
can.
a jam.
No, you definitely have to monitor the type of music, like you said, Tiara, that you're investing in here because, like you said, you might know what path you're on or what you're working on, and then here come this song, and it's like intrusive because you're like, oh, and one aspect of it, you're like, oh, this is my jam, but then when you actually sit and let those lyrics resonate, you're like, okay, no, this is counterproductive. I cannot do this because next thing you know, that might trigger you to think about somebody and then you going backwards. So I did want to say, speaking of music, y'all, what does it mean to have artists who give us permission to heal and be whole? And I'll speak to India.Arie, for instance. Like, her music is very uplifting, encouraging, and very spiritual. Like, what does it mean to have artists that create healing music?
Whew, that's a hard one because it's gems to find. I think I'm a very like R&B, neo soul kind of girl. And
Girl.
I listen just very intently, and not the old like Tony Braxton, my love left me and now I'm sad, but it's more of like just the I am a light, I can shine, I want to spread my light. I love me and I love you. You know, like that's the aura that I try to set for myself. And so I just be very intentional about it. I think it's a blessing, really, because I don't have the talent. And I love that there are other people who have gone through similar struggles or have overcome certain things and then pour into this creative genius to give us songs that we can relate to. So I find it very spiritual, just spiritually aligning, just to sit and listen to calming music as I wake up. You know, it starts the day, it sets the intention off well. So that's how I kind of jam. That's my music choice.
Would you say, and Candace, you can chime in too, like, would you say that for somebody who, say, doesn't have health insurance or can't afford to go to traditional therapy, would you recommend like positive, uplifting music as a tool, as a resource? And if so, how would you present that to them? Somebody comes to you and say that they're, you know, I don't know. I personally, I'll be honest with y'all. My daughter, she pretty much kind of listens to everything I listen to. Doesn't mean she likes it, but I was very intentional when I introduced her to India.Arie. And it was during a time where she was dealing with some depression. And it's a gift. Like, that art is such a gift. And to be able to share that intentionally with someone and then allow them to have that personal experience with it and sit with their thoughts and their feelings. And now my daughter, like, she loves India.Arie, and she knows if she's in a depressive mood, she knows where to go and what to do. So back to my question, would you, or how would you present that to somebody if they were struggling with depression and just didn't have access to healthcare or therapists?
Candace, did you want to take that on? Or I can jump in. I have a thought.
I'm gonna let you go first.
Okay. I think that I would introduce it in a way of just like from an anxiety standpoint, right? Like, describe what you're feeling. I think it's important to call out what anxiety means to you. Because it could be something that is like, I need to just sit in silence for a minute to let my brain think, right? Or I'm just kind of frazzled and I need something calming. So kind of thinking of, wait, do I need raindrops? Do I need forest? Do I need instrumentals? Do I need just something to kind of white noise,
Yep.
Or do I need to hear something speak to my soul? So I think just kind of categorizing what feelings are you missing right now and what's causing this feeling, I think is one way to go about it. But I think just also holistically, like, self-soothing practices are important just to have just in your day-to-day. So I don't know if that's like the full answer, but I think that it helps kind of get you to a calmer mind state, so that you can then seek other long-term strategies, right? So going out for a walk, taking a little brief walk, getting some sunlight. The power of this springtime right now has been hitting in this Atlanta sun. So just even taking a moment just to sit or, jam to a little quick session, make some food, eat a good salad, like all those small things that are within your control, I think are just helpful self-soothing techniques. But I love music as the first option as well. So I think that's the easiest access that folks can be able to get.
Yeah.
Yes. I love how Tiara mentioned different varieties of music, whether you're listening to some weather, some raindrops. It doesn't necessarily have to be from a certain artist. Or I was thinking this, and y'all tell me if you've experienced the same thing, or growing up as a child. Listening to gospel music is definitely obviously positive, right? But there are some songs that really make me feel depressed. Like, and I'm like, you really have to be careful. Like, I'm not going to be that type of friend that if I know you're going through something, I'm not going to send you some heavy Aretha Franklin, because I feel like that's going to really make you cross the mold. But
yeah,
I guess it depends. Like Tiara, like Angie was saying, it depends. You got to know your person. You got to know who you're dealing with. Because I know with me, and I'm like, look, I want you to send me some, I don't know. I don't want the sad gospel songs. Like even a Kirk Franklin, I need something hype. Like every time that I smile, hey, okay, I don't even know lyrics. Like,
but you know that smile. You know the smile. You know the smile.
But please do not send me no depressing, sad, where someone is crying in the background. But we all know, like, there are some gospel songs that are meant to be inspirational, but it's like, Lord, this is adding to my self-pity. This is adding to my loathing. I don't know. Maybe that's just, but I really get a little picky when it comes to listening to some gospel songs, because I'm like, this feels heavy. It feels very heavy, and I don't know if I don't even know the right word, but as flip-floppy as it may sound, I mean, even some controversial as it may sound, some gospel music may kind of put me at a level where it's like, oh, I don't know if this is really healthy for me.
I mean, I think Black gospel is unique in its own experience, because it's a lot of music about overcoming, right? And you got to talk about where we were and then how we kind of overcame. But it's sad to hear that stuff sometimes, right? So I hear you. You have to have like a curated playlist a little bit. So if you know that you are in need of some hype music, if Beyonce is your girl, then Beyonce is who we are today. Be a Renaissance woman, or it's just like you just have to know kind of where your lane is.
Okay,
where your fans?
Yes. Oh my goodness. No, that I love what you said about having a curated list. So it's really, I think, it sounds like intentionality of using and leveraging the resources that we have access to. And we are some creative people. Come on now. We are a creative community. And now, like I said, now more than ever, we have to pull in our resources and shed light, because just because our community is creative, it doesn't mean every individual is a creative or that they think with their, creative mind. So it's important for those of us who do think outside the box and who are seeking alternate solutions that we're open and sharing that. I think this is definitely the time for sharing. That's why I love that we're having this conversation today, because I'm like, whoever stumbles upon this might be new information to them. Granted, they might be able to turn the radio on and listen to music, but maybe nobody ever presented the option of, hey, just create a curated list. And whenever you're feeling down, you go to that list intentionally with the goal of regulating your feelings, centering yourself, and just giving yourself a sense of grounding.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love it.
So I look forward to us continuing to have these type of conversations and becoming more creative with what we actually do have access to. And speaking of which, I see my sister disappeared there for a minute, but we're going to continue the conversation. Tiara, what are your thoughts around group therapy? Before you answer, let me just tell you, when we started doing our merch, we actually have a t-shirt. I don't know if it's out there on our merch site right now, but we have a t-shirt that says podcasts are the new group therapy. And so,
Mm.
yeah. So
Mhm.
what are your thoughts around group therapy in this day and age? And what are your thoughts about podcasts being the new group therapy?
Interesting. I really have not seen group therapy in a clinical setting
Mhm.
often in my career. But I think that it can be useful, right? I think that like the intention behind it is to find commonality, find community. But I haven't seen it in more of a clinical approach. So I can't speak to the science of that strategy. But I
Mhm.
do love, and it's interesting to hear because everybody has like a podcast, right? But not all group therapy is great therapy. I think that when we allow spaces for multiple opinions, multiple thoughts, it can kind of cause sometimes more confusion to the kind of point at hand, if you will. But I think podcasting or just any kind of area where folks can commune and just share their opinions, I think is just a way to just release. It's an outlet, right? That's the reason what prompts us to want to just, share our thoughts. And if it's aligned and strategic enough and authentic enough, then there are people who can build and, appreciate and kind of, almost like reinvigorate you in a way, because now I know that you feel something similar and we can experience that together, even though it may not look the same, but we have, similar experiences that we can draw from. So I love that idea of podcasting or just any level of just community-based work that allows people who look or can relate to a similar thing. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I personally have no experience with like clinical group therapy. I've always heard about it. I've seen it on TV and movies, and I will say no. Let me take that back. So I guess it would be a clinical setting. So I don't know, Tiara, if you're aware of my background, but I grew up in like the foster care group home juvenile justice system.
Mhm.
So
No.
I did have a group therapy, but it was with my peers, and
Mm-hmm.
we weren't in a clinical setting. It was more like a group home, and then like the clinicians or the therapist would come in and meet with us. So I do have experience from when I was younger, but not as an adult. So I don't know what that looks like or
Mm-hmm.
feels like. But
Mm-hmm.
I do agree with you when you were saying, as far as like, it has to be a safe space. You have to create, like you said, the community so that everybody feels welcome to share. I think if anybody is going to try to form their own, let's say, group, I don't want to call it therapy, but let's just say community, with the intention and purpose of having a healing space, right? A safe space where people can share, that you do have to establish like ground rules. And that way everybody feels comfortable in sharing. And yeah, I think that that's part of the intentionality. So, whereas podcast, I think with at least our podcast, the overall branding of our podcast is really around healing and purposeful living. And so we always want to respect diverse perspectives. We welcome diverse perspectives. And, I would just encourage anybody that's out there looking at podcasts and seeking that community that they want to be a part of. Hopefully, they'll want to be a part of Pretty Purposeful Podcast community. But let's say you find another, and you're just, you may come across something on the algorithm. I think you just have to be very intentional about what it is that you need, what you're seeking out of the community, and I think it can be truly beneficial when you have someone there to just remind you that you're not alone,
Right.
um,
Right.
and that you have a space to share. Yep. Since while you were away, we were just talking about group therapy. I shared with Tiara that we have T-shirts that actually say podcasts are the new group therapy. And so we were just talking about like, with there being lack of or access to mental health services for a large part of our community, is group therapy the way, to get, people the healing and the outlet that they need?
Yes, group therapy is so key. When I was going through my breakup, I downloaded BetterHelp, and they have like different group therapy sessions on there, and I joined as many as possible. Like,
What did that look like?
Yeah, tell us.
yeah, it was like a Zoom call. So every group had one therapist leading it. We all introduced ourselves, and it was like a good 45-minute group therapy where we could all just share what we were going through. And then it was facilitated by a therapist. Very helpful for me. Very helpful. I was on a group call, it felt like 2 or 3 times a day.
Sometimes you need that. Did you feel closer to the people that were around you versus how you would feel like an individual one-on-one therapy? I was just curious if like where you would kind of rank that experience. That's something that you would do often, or was that kind of isolated to a particular incident?
Isolated to a particular, well, I don't find myself motivated to do group therapy as much as I was when I was going through that hard time. One-on-one therapy was good, and the group therapy felt just as good, because it's like, man, it's 5 other people dealing with the same thing I'm going through, or going through something worse, 10 times worse, and it's like they're still taking it day by day. Yeah.
So it just provided you some like better perspective around other people. That's fair. Interesting. We were saying that we had never been to group therapy or haven't really seen it in practice fully in our adult ages. So just want to hear, just your perspective on that. Interesting.
Yes, I did. I took full advantage.
I know that's right.
My job offered, they offer 5 free BetterHelp sessions, and then included with the package, BetterHelp offers group therapy. So there's, a mother's group therapy, an anxiety group therapy, a breakup, a depression group. There's so many different groups, 20-year-old group dealing with anxiety, so many different things. Undecided about my faith, undecided about my sexuality, all of those different groups that try to, tank sexual addiction. They have so many different platforms. And no, we are not being sponsored by BetterHelp. This is genuinely Candace talking from my own experience.
That's fair. I think the underlying theme though is just like finding community, right? And like even if it's not through therapy, can your job offer that? Are there employee resource groups that exist? Are there, on Eventbrite, are there just folks who are just interested in doing the same knitting or baking as you? Like how can you immerse yourself around people who relate to the things that you want to do?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, those are all great ideas. And you guys, I can't believe we are already at an hour. Can y'all believe it?
No, I cannot.
Y'all, there's so much more to unpack around mental health awareness, and especially around our community. We're going to keep the conversation going in the comments, after this episode airs. We will continue this. You guys know every season we touch on mental health awareness. So we definitely will continue the conversation. But before we get out of here, Tiara, we did want to, we do Purpose Pulse. So we want to ask you, what is one belief about mental health that you've had to unlearn?
Ooh. And I wasn't prepared for this one. I think one thing that I've had to unlearn, is that I had to do everything myself. Like I had to figure it out all on my own. And I'm still working on it. So it's maybe half a bell because I can at least acknowledge it, right? I can say that I have just been a very independent woman for a very long time. And so I think I have the answers when I can recognize that something is off. But the answer is like, it's okay to lean, and it's okay to not have all the responses, and I can still be just the same badass girl that I am and still seek help from friends, from family, from therapists, like that is how you build community and that is how you learn to be better. So that's probably one of the biggest takeaways that I'm actively eating through, just to continue to push through even when I'm not fully myself and leaning on my people.
Yes, I love that. I love your transparency. We thank
Yeah.
you so much for joining and giving all of your insights and wisdom. Candace, before we get out of here, did you want to share a belief about mental health that you had to unlearn?
A belief about mental health. What is normal? What is normal?
Right.
What is normal?
You better
What
say
is
that.
normal? I don't know.
I had to get rid of this. I just want to be normal.
Yeah.
What is normal?
Mm-hmm.
And thank God, he made
just period. There's nothing.
He made each and every person different on purpose. And thank God we're all different. So, what is normal?
Exactly. I love that. Yep. And I think for me, something that I had to unlearn was that, it's okay to not be okay. Like unlearning that you can't be okay. Like, no, you can be it's okay to not be okay. That is the human experience. At some point we all are going to experience those moments, whether it be situational. You just that's just part of the human experience. And I think the more open, the more we keep this conversation going, we can really, help some people seek the help that they have probably, like myself, have thought that, was meant that something was wrong with them. And really, it's like, no, if you don't do something about it, if you don't address it, it absolutely can impact your whole quality of life in totality. So I think at this point, y'all, we've touched on some great points during this episode. We touched on, our history, where we formed our opinion about mental health, how this new administration, the resources that we are currently losing, and just how we need to be proactive, like you said, Tiara, be intentional about creating safe spaces, creating and building community, and also sharing the resources that we have with our people, because we are all we got.
We are all we got.
Period.
All right. Well, ladies,
I appreciate y'all. Yes, it's been we are all we have, right? Like these conversations are important. We have to be able to speak it, say it, so that people can do it and know that we can follow in y'all's footsteps. Y'all are an inspiration with every episode drops. Like, you're reaching people who didn't even know they needed to hear what needed to be said. So this is important work. Thank y'all.
Thank you so much. And of course, we don't want to go, we're already over a few minutes, but really quickly, I did just want to let you all know that we actually introduced the Purpose Hub on our website. So I'm just going to share really quickly that for you guys. So if you go to our website, prettypurposefulpodcast.com, and click on support the movement, drop down, there is an option there that says Purpose Hub. And this is it. We've got some really great trusted media sources there. We got Roland Martin, the Defiant Lawyers Network. Again, this is curated with our community in mind. So we do have mental health and wellness resources for Black women, Black men. We also have National Alliance on Mental Health, and we also have the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and a host of a whole lot of other resources. 211 Find Help, Legal Defense Fund. So definitely check it out when you have a moment. And of course, if you would like to be a guest on our podcast, you can also register to be a guest while you're there. Before we get out of here, y'all, and as always, ladies, it's okay to be pretty,
but even better to be
pretty purposeful. Why? Here comes the theme song. Pretty purposeful, pretty purposeful.
Pretty purposeful, pretty purposeful.
I'm holding up y'all mic.
This has been so awesome. I wish we had more time. Oh my gosh. Tiara, we can't thank you enough for joining, girlie. We want to get a little still photo. I know we're live right now. Let me actually end this live so we can get our picture. Bye, everyone. Okay, exit. Oh no, actually, before we go, Tiara, let me get your. Did you want your Instagram, your LinkedIn? What did you want us to share with the audience?
I still see live in the corner, just so you know. I don't know if we're still
Oh,
live or not.
oh. Exit out of here and in the stream. Is that outro? No, we don't have the outro video.